Digital Pilipinas, bringing together the world's industry leaders in a multi-month movement of innovation and nation building to solve the country's age-old problems with technology. Technology can be our nation's strength and advantage as we showcase Filipino tech expertise to make a lasting impact on the country, influence change, and foster inclusion through technology and innovation across local and global spheres. To do this, Digital Pilipinas champions a 12-point agenda that provides solutions while leveraging on ICT-driven opportunities. Fintech, GovTech, and RegTech. PropTech. Digital transformation. Overseas Filipino banking. Future of mobility. InsurTech. E-commerce. Cybersecurity. Internet of Energy. Future of education, digital cities, gaming. The 12-point agenda will be our guiding star as we trade with trust, encourage cross-border collaborations, e-commerce, open finance, and work hand-in-hand with national and global tech leaders. Digital Pilipinas is a legacy in the making. In 2019, Amor Maclang, Fintech Philippines Executive Director, and Geyser Maclang Marketing Communications Incorporated co-founder, led the Philippine delegation in the Singapore Fintech Festival. In 2020, the country joined the ranks of emerging leaders in the largest event for global tech innovators, the World Fintech Festival. Now, Ms. Maclang, the appointed convener of the World Fintech Festival Philippines, is taking it a step further by gathering the brightest minds to establish the roadmap of the country's technological future with Digital Pilipinas. In the coming months, we will create the Digital Pilipinas Blueprint. It is a whole-of-nation, whole-of-society, whole-of-business approach with national leaders, foreign partners, and the private sector. Filipinos are at the heart of the ASEAN digital revolution, with Asia as the sandbox of innovations. With Digital Pilipinas, our nation will collectively break barriers, tech up industries, and go beyond what seemed to be impossible before. Watch out for our different events and programs in the following months featuring Business Without Borders, Real Estate and PropTech, EduTech, InsurTech and HealthTech, Environment and Sustainability, Diversity and Inclusion, Esports and Gaming, Cyber Defense and Cybersecurity. Get ready to join our biggest initiatives during the Global Impact Fintech ASEAN Conference, the Risky Business Series, the World Fintech Festival Reduxes, the Singapore Fintech Festival, the Next Generation Leaders Conference, culminating in the launch of the World Fintech Festival Philippines in November. Join the movement and be part of the country's digital revolution. Contact us by email and through our Facebook pages to learn more and be part of the whole-of-nation, whole-of-society platform for global and local prosperity. Digital Pilipinas is supported by the following partners and prime movers in innovation and nation building from the government and private sectors. Join the movement today. Mabuhay tayong lahat. Mabuhay ang Digital Pilipinas.
Welcome back to the World Fintech Festival, the global partnership between Digital Pilipinas and the Singapore Fintech Festival. We hope you're recharged and refreshed for this afternoon's lineup. Allow me to welcome back our moderator, John Aguilar, serial entrepreneur, creator, and host of the final pitch on CNN Philippines.
Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to moderate this panel. I want you all to get started with the panel discussion, but first, let's hear from Ant Group's Cheng Guoming, General Manager of Alipay and Global Payments Partnership.
Greetings to the audience and to my fellow panelists in the Philippines. Thank you for having me at the World Fintech Festival. All business today, regardless of size or industry, can benefit from leveraging the exceptional scale and the utility that mobile networks provide. Over the past decades, we have explored various ways for global merchants to accept payment from Chinese travelers, worked side by side with local mobile wallet partners, and developed technical solutions to help them lay out a mobile payment business in their home market. Working with different mobile wallets and merchants around the world has also provided us with unique insights into what the market wants and needs. This led to the genesis of Alipay Plus, cross-border mobile payment and marketing solutions developed by Ant Group. Alipay Plus provides comprehensive tools and services to enhance your business capabilities and help you grow in today's digital era. Over the time, Alipay Plus has refined and standardized ways to manage operational efficiency with minimum adaptations. The one-time integration system of Alipay Plus overcomes the challenges that merchants face from adopting different mobile payment methods one by one. Meanwhile, it becomes a scalable approach for merchants to reach global consumers in a more cost-efficient and effective manner. Via this one-time integration, Alipay Plus partners are provided with advanced cross-border tax solutions for payment processing, clearing, and settlement services. The icing on the cake is that Alipay Plus also provides an unparalleled pool of global brands where you, as a mobile wallet, can expand your acceptance overseas. If you are looking for an approach tailored for engaging mobile payment users, Alipay Plus marketing solution is your answer, as it has been specially created for mobile-based business. Among the marketing solutions provided by Alipay Plus, some enable consumers to enjoy real-time digital offers and vouchers through which merchants can effectively attract their target consumers. Other features include sending out e-vouchers to mobile payment users directly through the payment apps. Despite its diverse capabilities, payment service remain at the very heart of Alipay Plus mobile wallet solution for our partners. We have put forward a suite of mobile wallet solutions that range from payment, remittance, to money transfer in order to meet various user needs. And now, we are starting to extend these solutions to external clients for them to build their own mobile wallets. With Alipay Plus, your business could reach more customers globally in the ways that you could never have imagined.
Thank you very much, Mr. Guoming, and welcome once again to today's panel, Asia as the largest fintech, balancing hypergrowth and consumer advocacy and protection. We have an incredible lineup of reactors joining us today, so let's bring them on screen so we can jumpstart this exciting discussion. First, we have Fred Levy, Chief Commercial Officer of GCash. Hello, Fred.
Hi, John. Nice to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Everyone's talking about Gcash, or may I say Mint. Great news for the ecosystem. Please tell us about what you do over at Gcash for those who are not familiar.
Well, Gcash is the leading e-wallet in the Philippines with more than 51 million actually users. And yes, we recently closed a new funding round, bringing the valuation of the company to more than $2 billion US, which makes basically Gcash the first duocorn of the Philippines. So it's a good news for Gcash and Mint and the team and existing investor, but more important, I think it's a great news for the overall fintech ecosystem in the country.
Duocorn, it escapes me sometimes the immensity or the scope of the achievement that you were able to achieve. So thank you very much for being here on this panel. So up next, we have Mr. Victor Paterno, President and CEO of Philippine 7 Corporation. Hello, Victor.
Hi, John, and hello, everyone watching and to my co-panelists. Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Nice to have you here. So Philippine 7 Corporation is the parent company of 7-Eleven. Please tell us about your company for those who are not familiar.
Well, we have 3,000 stores. We started in 1984, and we take in a lot of payments. So that's why I'm part of these panels, much more than any other of the 7-Elevens. Basically, you have to digitize cash. So that's what we do.
All right, so you're there on the ground, and I'm sure we will have many insights from you later on. So up next, we have Todd Schweitzer, CEO of Browncas. Hi, Todd.
Hi, John. Good day to all the panelists.
Okay, so Todd, please tell us about Browncas.
Yeah, so Browncas is an open banking or open finance technology company. We operate across the region, and I think what's so exciting about the hypergrowth of fintech in Southeast Asia and kind of APAC more broadly is that the decoupling of financial services powered by APIs and being able to connect to apps like Gcash or to connect to over-the-counter stores like 7-Eleven or coins.ph wallet is a way to reach customers in a completely new way, but it also creates new habits and potential risks as it relates to consumer data protection. And so open banking is really in many ways a fulcrum for a lot of the fintech growth in the region. And so Browncas is, we're thrilled to be a part of this session, but we also have a vantage point as a participant in and an observer of the hypergrowth fintech ecosystem in the region. So thank you, John, and looking forward to a discussion with the rest of the panelists.
Thank you, Todd. Great to have you here. So finally, we are honored to welcome Juan Liboro, Privacy Commissioner at National Privacy Commission. Hello, Juan.
Thank you, John, and thank you for having me. And frankly, I'm more excited to learn from my co-panelists in today's session. So thank you.
And we're excited to learn from you as well, sir. So welcome, gentlemen, to this event, and thank you for taking the time to join this panel discussion. So let's begin with the first question. So the first question I have for the panel, and anyone can take this. So on making algorithms accountable, is in its state of hypergrowth, can fintechs work better to protect consumers from lending risks? How can we avoid lend-to-learn models that experiment with consumers who lack a formal credit history? So anyone can take this question. So essentially the guinea pigs, or at least how we make them so. How can we protect our consumers from this lend-to-learn model?
Okay, I'll start. We have a pretty large database because we've been doing payments, 20 million unique phone numbers at least. So with payment histories going back several years. And what we've done is we've opened this up, Commissioner, all anonymized, to lending companies. And this is free. And what they do is, what's in it for them is they get to lend, and they say, we want to lend. And we say, okay, this is the number of the guy. Yeah, first we ask for his consent, etc. When they pay into our stores, they have to give their phone number and they have to give their consent. Can we contact you just in case something goes wrong with the transaction, for example? And what we do is it's free, but those who you don't lend to, you have to score them anyway. So as far as back to the question, I guess we keep track of all the algorithms and accountability. Well, it's their money, it's their risk. No? And I suppose to that question, it would be a credit score of sorts. Banks should be able to compare it. No, this guy's borrowing too much money. I thought I was just the only one. But yeah, so those are my comments for the space. I do think it's premature to worry about that because a lot of people can't get like a loan unless they pay 20% a week. Right? So there's ways to go.
So you're saying premature because the Philippines in general, the banking system, very conservative.
Most people cannot get a loan from a formal lender,
right?
From a regulated lender, except for a pawn shop, but that's different, right?
Right. Any other reactions?
Maybe John, I can follow up Victor on that one. The first thing for me is how can we protect the consumer for the lending risk? Because it's true that it's just starting this access to loan and let's say democratization of access to loan. But with the BNPL fury these days, you can see that it's going to be easier and easier for a lot of people to have access to credit solutions. So at some point, it's also for each player to consider what he wants to do with these kind of opportunities. I mean, let's also keep in mind that any guy who proposes loan, his number one fear is to not see his money back. So it's also protecting himself to make sure that he set up the correct parameter. So on the consumer aspect, I think one of the key stuff is to make sure that the player avoid user from being able to borrow outside of their capacity to pay back, actually. So that starts probably by customizing the loan offering, as Victor was saying. I mean, make sure that you borrow money at the right amount, at the right rates, so the people on the other side are not struggling at some point, and it's a catastrophic situation for everyone. And clearly the scoring, at least from a GCash point of view, the score point is critical. I'll just have a couple of words about that after that. But the second thing is also probably over-educating the consumer. I mean, for a lot of people, loan is today something they don't have access to, or when they have access to, it's associated to loan shark. So if suddenly there is an affordable way to have access to this kind of financial solution, you need to make sure that they know what it means, that lending is not loan shark, it's two different business actually. And for that, you need to make sure that you develop awareness on what is an acceptable rate, what are the legitimate channels, and all of that. Now, specifically in the case of GCash, I would say that the lend to learn situation, we learned that one. We learned the hard way actually, because we have this financial services capacity since many years, and at some point, yeah, there was a lend to learn situation. The advantage, I would say, that on that one is, number one, we collected a lot of data. That's the one thing. And the number two thing, we were able to create our own scoring system, the G-score, and which is now a huge leverage to avoid this kind of dramatic situation I was mentioning earlier. One of the solutions is probably, and maybe Todd can also react to that. As we know, there is no today one central scoring system that can be the one and only that everybody could refer to. So there is probably also a thinking process for particularly financial existing player to partner. I mean, I know, for example, in the case of GCash, as I said, the system we have is kind of solid now. There's a long learning period before that. And we realized that it could be something interesting for other partners. So we are actually now monetizing this scoring system to allow other partners to have access to it and reinforce their own scoring system. So I wouldn't say necessarily the pure open banking, but it's going in that direction. Maybe Todd can react to that.
Yeah, thanks, Fred. I think it's important to remember in most of emerging Southeast Asia, there is no credit bureau that is reliable and up to date. Yes, there are blacklists, but even those blacklists might not have the most recent scammers on them, right? And so as a result, lenders need to build their own profiles of consumers. And part of the reason why, as Fred pointed out, the loan sharks, you know, in the Philippines or Indonesia are charging something like 20% per month or more is because they don't have a way of evaluating risk of customer, even if that borrower has been receiving remittances $1,000 a month reliably every month for the last 10 years, right? And so I think core to enabling more affordable lending, as well as providing more access, frankly, to borrowers in the Philippines or Indonesia or Vietnam or elsewhere, is having secure data portability. Which means I, as a borrower, if I choose to, and if I work with a secure and safe technology provider, then I can choose to share my data from that demonstrates my capacity as a borrower to a third party of my choice. And I can also revoke that access at any point. So Fred brought this up. I mean, there are, he probably knows this, but there are many lenders that would love to pay a fee to GCash to access the G credit score as a way to do alternative scoring of their borrowers. On the other side, if I have been receiving remittances or if I have a bank account, a long-standing bank relationship with a bank, I should be able to share my bank transaction data with a potential borrower without needing to, for example, go to a branch and pay the equivalent of $2 per page and then walk it over to the next lender in order to be scored for an account. So I think what's so important about open banking, but generally speaking, data portability in a market like the Philippines, is the ability for customers to choose how they provide this data, and doing so in a secure way.
Right. Of course, they do opt in to this, but you know, it's also the communication. It was mentioned earlier, the over communication is needed as well. Would anyone like to comment on what Todd just shared with us?
Yeah, I think on the overall communication, John, it's I mean, fintech, and I don't know what my dear colleague in this panel are thinking, but fintech is probably one of the ecosystem where the partnership between public and private works super well, honestly, whether it's with the BSP or other organization. I mean, it's really super smooth, and the conversation, and even when there is a need to sit down and adapt some regulation to the reality of the situation and all of that, you always found some very interesting partner on the table with the public part. And I would say even on the private business, of course, there is competition, there is negotiation, and sometimes tension. But if I compare, and I'm in Philippines since 15 years, if I compare to other environment, and maybe Victor can talk about the retail one, honestly, it's a pretty healthy ecosystem these days. I mean, when we are negotiating with a partner, on when we are thinking about, okay, maybe we could do something in common, or even the FinTech Alliance where all the industries speak as one, I would say this is still an environment where everything is kind of smooth. There is competition left and right, of course, but you don't necessarily feel some hard one like you can see in other industries. And I think everybody is pretty aligned. Why I'm talking about that? Because everybody is pretty aligned that the need of communication, the need of evangelization is a win-win for every player, from the public to the different private player. Everybody at this point in time have interest to sustain that momentum, educate the people, and particularly when you start to talk about the unbanked user and even the lowest part, the bottom of the pyramid, everybody has interest to evangelize these days. There is, on that one, clearly there is a consensus.
Right, consensus, cooperation, working together. So now with coins.ph, you know, you, I guess in a lot of ways have, you are under the Ayala umbrella as well. You work with GCash as well. So how does that work in our current environment now?
Okay, yeah, so coins.ph is the first blockchain-enabled wallet that has both license for EMI and being a virtual asset service. provider. For us at the moment, lending is not something that we at the moment are looking at, but I do agree with what my co-panelists Fred and Victor said around the fact that there has to be a more knowledge sharing and there has to be more education to the users for the purposes of being able to get access to better loan and better rates. But there is a huge opportunity for a centralized way of scoring the customers, so that at least the good players and the good customers with the good credit rating are able to get the right loan at the right price.
Okay, thank you for that. So I have another question here. So algorithms can dispassionately render verdicts on creditworthiness and loan qualifications that can reinforce existing biases. How can we avoid this? And would it be possible to use algorithms to make financials more inclusive?
I would say that algorithm is something that actually allows like better decision making to some extent as far as the lending is concerned, but then it does remove the warmth of the decision making for a lot of financial sectors, and that is where the real challenge comes in, and it might also go in the direction that it would make decisions very adverse to a certain part of the society, just because that's the AI direction that's happening. But this said, I do think that it allows generally a better decision making here.
Yeah, I would quip that algorithms may be cold, but they're probably warmer than your neighborhood loan shark.
I like how you put that. Warmer with a little bit more heart, perhaps.
Yeah, and you probably prefer to deal in advance with an algo who tell you no, that a loan shark who basically knock your door, you know.
Yeah.
So
but here,
maybe,
I'd like to raise this may be off topic, but it's an interesting question. So I talked to, like, call them traditional lenders, but microfinance, card, 5 million borrowers, 35 years, Grameen model, home credit, whom you all know. So they are convinced that in the Philippines, you cannot lend to people without having your own collectors. Right? And I'm curious what everybody thinks about that. And if you look at the history of lending fintechs here, that has turned out to be true. Because the court system, so I was talking to one of the people in Alipay, and said, well, how do you lend in China? What happens if you don't pay? And he looked at me and said, we put them in jail. Like, okay. In the Philippines, we have to ask nicely.
Right. So is it a cultural thing, you feel, that
it's a law and it's a legal system thing.
Okay.
It gets very difficult to collect in the Philippines.
Okay. So what you're saying is there's no teeth, essentially. So people know that they can afford not to pay.
If the amounts are small, it's not worth the legal fees, right?
Right. Okay. Anyone would like to comment on that?
yeah, I think, John, also, at some point in fintech, there is a fin, you know what I mean? So there is some things where we are basically shortcoming the situation, finding, you know, different way to improve the customer experience, reduce the cost and the user experience and all of that. But fundamentally, at the end, I mean, if some financial institution cannot loan money to some people because basically their scoring doesn't allow it because the algo says so, why somehow a digital business would act differently? What you can probably have is a more accurate data. In the case of G-Score, for example, we are able to determine your scoring based on everything you're doing on Gcash, including the number of load that you're buying, the amount that you're spending per week, per month, and the velocity, the propensity. I mean, all the people in this panel are aware of this kind of stuff. But at the end, yeah, all this data goes in a machine, and an algo who is telling you, okay, John is good to be loaned at this amount for that period. And I mean, I don't see how any financial institution, whether it's online, offline, or whatever, would act differently. I mean, why online would be, oh, John looks cool. He have nice glasses. Okay, here's your rate, John. I mean, at some point there is rationale on the table, and you cannot take out that from the equation. I would say the advantage is probably that in fintech you have access to a lot more data, so you can extract much more insight and be more accurate on what you will propose to the consumer, which can open access probably to some user to financial services that maybe they would not have access to the traditional financial institution.
If I could, yeah. The warmth, you know where it comes from. So there are some lenders, the guys with boots on the ground, restructuring. So the like Home is an algo-driven company, but when they restructure, which they've had to do during the pandemic, that's face-to-face. That's the collector. I don't know how warm he is, but because it is a difficult discussion. But yes, there is that part, the restructuring part. Hopefully, it doesn't happen too often.
Right, Commissioner Juan, can we have a reaction from you?
Thank you, John. And it's really been interesting listening to fintech innovators as my co-panelists. I've been learning a lot. But let me just start by saying that we in government, governments do only two things, right? We provide and we protect, right? Think about it. It's the only two things that governments do. We provide and we protect. So when it comes to fintech, and let me just state this, and probably you can also learn from the regulator. Data protection authorities or regulators, we are not the gatekeepers of what can or cannot be done. We do not like or dislike technologies. We are technology neutral, but we're here is to remind what we call personal information controllers, and you are personal information controllers, about your obligations, again, to protect consumers and citizens. So when governments protect, the primary thing that government, the instrument or weapon of government is to enact laws. That's why in the Philippines, we have the Data Privacy Act of 2012. Right? It's a law that was enacted to protect citizens, but at the same time, and let me stress this, and for you who are operating here in the Philippines, it's also mandated to ensure that there's free flow of information. So the NPC, the National Privacy Commission, has always batted for the successful use of technologies in every human endeavor, from contact tracing to treating, to responding to COVID, and now fintech or financial technologies. But for us to enable it to be successful, these apps must be trusted, right? So for that to be trusted, we have the law that prescribes that three things that we should always be thinking about. It's adhering to general data privacy and protection principles of transparency, purpose, and proportionality. The second is that ensuring that you apply appropriate security, organizational, technical, and physical measures to protect the personal data that you collect. And third is really proportionality. So Victor, in our term, sakto lang, right, for your purpose. So with that, let me just, for example, you're now talking about algorithms and automated decision making. We have very specific requirements for fintech operators. You have to register with the National Privacy Commission. If you are operating a fintech app that does automated processing, you have to notify the regulator that you are operating such, and that you are determining that you are using automated processing as a sole basis for making decisions about on a person. So let me just make it clear, right, that as a regulator, of course, we are for the promotion of financial technologies that are inclusive, but at the same time that should be trusted. So this will be, I think the fintech company and the regulator can both join hands in attaining this. Right, and there are ways. Now, for example, right now we are crafting a regulatory sandbox circular, which I think would really benefit those that in your industry, because we understand, right, that there are innovation that can be tested, right, but only in a market setting, right? But then we can derive knowledge and learnings from such, so that we can also again continue improving the trust factors that we can include or embed in promoting such a technology that would benefit many, right? So as a regulator, we are not a one-trick pony, right? We are not one-dimensional. We are an enabler and a protector, and we have exercised this in the case of the Philippines. As you may well know, we were faced with a very unique, well, not exactly a unique use case about online lending applications, right? That, what had transpired here is that we had incidents where loan providers did not adequately inform data subjects, especially what will happen if they defaulted on loan payments, right? That we have had now, recently we have struck down 4 online lending applications, struck them off from Google Play, because of violating provisions of the Data Privacy Act. And what we have monitored is that they actually provide real risk of severity and harm to individuals, right? And we also distinguish that there are legitimate fintech players, and I'm sure they're also in our panel today, that are promoting financial technologies in a responsible, lawful, and fair manner. So again, the National Privacy Commission again supports the successful use of digital technologies and the processing of personal data that is effective and preserves the data privacy rights of individuals. And we are always open to work with companies and innovators to achieve the aim of inclusivity, especially now that we are all really working towards recovering from the pandemic. Just an opening statement, John. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Mon. Todd, would you like to react to that?
Yeah, I think, well, first off, I think, we are big supporters of the National Privacy Commission in the Philippines. There is a proactive registration as a data steward that really any technology company is encouraged to apply, and Browncas has done so, and it's very much following the standards of making sure that there's a data protection officer who is formally obligated actually to, as an officer of the company, to maintain data protection. And the National Privacy Commission, again in the Philippines, has put out a number of kind of circulars and guidelines that help guide the industry. I think, frankly, faster than its peers elsewhere in Southeast Asia. So I think that's really appreciated and gives good guidance to the industry, and also allows for us to know where the guidelines are without needing to necessarily backtrack after the fact, which has happened with other tech companies in other markets. I think I think what I would add to Chairman Liboro's comments is, I think there is in a market like the Philippines that has limited transparency and access to financial services, we do not yet have a national online identification system, nothing like SingPass in Singapore, for example. There isn't a real-time credit bureau in place yet. So giving consumers a way to securely and safely, and always with their explicit consent, share identity data and share transaction data or otherwise usage data that may be relevant to them to access other financial services is, in my opinion, fundamentally important to development of the sector, and fundamentally important in a market where 50% of the population is still unbanked and they rely on informal financial services. And so I'll point to Gcash and Coins again, because Gcash has tens of millions of users, Coins has tens of millions of users, all of whom have been KYC'd, so their identity has been verified. In many cases, they've been verified basically up to the level that's required of a bank. They have to comply with regulations around cashing in and cashing out. In Coin's case, they have to wear the virtual asset hat and the e-money hat. But the point is if I, as a consumer, so it's not just about sharing my coins data with a lender. If I've already done KYC with coins, I should be able to use that KYC as a login to a new fintech app. And not only is that important from a, from an ease of use point of view, but it's actually, it gives customers flexibility to access new fintech products. And I was just catching up with a fintech founder the other day who has a 70% drop off in conversion for customers that need to go through manual identity verification, right? So it's good for the customers. It can become a revenue channel for the data stewards. And for the consumer, they now have more choice where they can port their data from party A to party B in a secure way. So I think we're seeing some early movement on that that's really encouraging for the sector, I think.
Right, Todd, if I were to have done my KYC with coins, it's a natural progression for GCash to also benefit from that. What if, let's say, another conglomerate were to use that? What are the things that would probably prevent that from happening? Because traditionally the Philippines has not been open in terms of sharing information. So how can we speed that up and make all these companies understand that this is the direction to go?
That is a good question and a tough question, and I'm also going to get in trouble if I'm too open about it. But I will say that the traditional conglomerate mentality is build everything vertically integrated, right? My customers, my channels, my agents, my distributors, my products, my customers, my customer data, period, right? My being me being the conglomerate, right? And I think that is changing whether or not the conglomerates are open to it, because we're already seeing early movers that are embracing a platform or an open approach, right? Now, open does not mean data is freely available, because personal information is freely available. No. Open means customers have the choice to share that access data or that data with third parties if they so choose. So my view is I don't think there is so I think what the Philippines has done so far in terms of setting guardrails is good, and let the early movers move. Let those that are thinking in new ways, the banks or the fintechs that are thinking about new ways of adopting or acquiring customers, new ways of partnering with other FIs or fintechs, allow them to do so, and sooner or later, the more traditional financial service providers will see that they're losing customers, and that is the best mechanism for them to act versus lobbying for a top-down mandate that requires parties to do A, B, and C. Anyway, I'll stop there.
Okay, we'll stop you right there. We don't want you to get into trouble with your very healthy opinions on subject matter. So I have another question here, this time on regulation. Do we have adequate enabling regulations that can help fintechs in hypergrowth? If not, what else needs to be undertaken? What kind of policies can be introduced to create an environment that is legally supportive of fintechs and also protective of the consumers? So anyone can take this?
Yeah, I can take that, John. I think, honestly, when I'm discussing with counterparts in other countries, we've been quite lucky on the fintech side in any exchange with any type of regulator, honestly. And it's coming from a foreigner, so whether it's on the data privacy part or with the BSP and all of that, honestly, all the conversations are each time very progressive. I can talk a little bit more about the BSP, sorry, Commissioner, because that's the one I'm interacting more often personally. And they are very future forward. Their approach is ambitious, but in the meantime also realistic. I mean, just one thing, a couple of years ago, I don't have exactly the year, maybe Todd know the year, but a couple of years ago, the digital transaction, whatever you put under digital, was like 3 or 2% of the overall transaction in the country. And there was this plan, 20% for 2020, which is, the kind of cool tagline, but you never really know if it's going to happen. It appeared that in the middle of the year, we were already beyond 20%. Like in a couple of years, suddenly things happen. And now the plan is 50% of the transaction to be digital before 2025. So I think it shows that, and this kind of results, I mean, There is no 20 way to achieve it. I mean, either it's a country, and I don't want problem like Todd. So either it's a country who clearly dictate that this thing has to happen, and it's in a very aggressive way, and not a lot of country actually can have this kind of leverage. And then yes, it can happen. It can, or it's the result of a smart, progressive, and cooperation, permanent conversation between the regulator and the operator, everybody keeping in mind that at some point, it has to be good for the consumer. If it's good for the consumer, if it's good for the user, well, it's good for the citizen, so the regulator is satisfied. And it's also good for the consumer, so the operator is satisfied. And I think that's currently the setup that's happening in the Philippines. And I can only say it works. It's very fruitful, and the results are there. So it's not just a nice sentence or whatever. It's happening.
You know, John, if I may react to that, John, and Fred, I think you should all realize that the stars are aligning in favor of fintech here in the Philippines. We have the enabling laws when you talk about the basic laws and the protection of consumers. We have the Data Privacy Act, the Cybercrime Prevention Act, and the creation of the DICT that actually established the Cybercrime Investigation Coordinating Center. We have a Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, as again attested to by Fred, that is really forward-looking, and even our Securities and Exchange Commission, and I think and I thought that you would all be agreeing with that. So really, it's now with that and the government really intent and serious in doing its part to come up with an inclusive and trusted environment. It's now really for the industry to really consolidate and and create that synergy. But really, there are really some challenges. For example, I go back to the online lending applications, which are really providing a bad rap to fintech, right? I mean, you're all being hit by by nefarious activities of some, right? So really, it's as government, we will continue to respond and try to be agile. John, technology will always be ahead of regulation, but I'm quite convinced that at least here in the Philippines, we are all trying to be agile. We are all trying to keep our ears on the ground and get the right temperature from the sector itself. So, as a sector, let me just, as a regulator, you also have to look and really try to police the ranks of the fintech, those that are really, not giving fintech a bad name. We should do something about that, because otherwise, all our efforts will be undermined by this. And right now we are monitoring 288 online lending applications. We have come up with what we call an algorithm ourselves right here in the NPC, right, where we now try to we are weighing these 288 apps based on the scoring system, whether they really provide the real risk of severity and harm to individuals, and that's where we again try to focus our efforts on. So alongside this, again, these are all happening because obviously the Philippines is very ripe, and as a market, there's a large number, as mentioned by Todd, 50% are unbanked. And a part of the stars aligning would be the implementation of the PhilSys ID, right? The national ID here. And we have supported, the National Privacy Council supported that initiative by embedding privacy by design in the national ID. We thought that, and it's been my stand, a legal identity is also a fundamental right. It's a springboard so that Filipinos can enjoy other rights, including privacy and financial inclusion. And that is our view, right? So these are all, again, this is really a good time for innovators like you. But again, just to remind you again, right, we will continue to be trusted. And you have to trust the regulators, right? We're here to ensure that there's free flow of information. But historically, regulators are also like brakes. No? We do not, this AI, machine learning, these are emerging technologies, and we're just here to remind everyone again that to practice accountability, operationalize your compliance, and practice digital ethics in everything that we do. Don't do unto others what you don't want to be done unto you. I think that should be the core principle of the things that we do. Thank you.
So as I was saying, digital ethics in a perfect world, well, we'd like to see that. But given our imperfect world, I think we have more reactions here from our panel, if you'd like to chime in as well.
I would like to extremely support with what Commissioner Liboro said, as like, I feel to say like Philippines is like the right country at the right time at the right place. It had regulations, and like for us, Coins being the first virtual asset service provider getting licensed in Philippines, and also being the first in Southeast Asia to have both the hats, as what Todd said earlier, it actually showed that the regulators are there and the law is there and they will support you, and you just have to follow and be accountable to the transactions and to respect the data privacy of it. So I would say that while hypergrowth is there, regulations are also there to support it. And only because of these two factors playing together is why we see, and what Fred said earlier, is that where the dream was to achieve 20%, now we have achieved beyond that, and we are putting ourselves at a different benchmark now for the next few years.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So at this point, I'd like to ask everyone for final words from you. If you'd like to touch on anything that we've not discussed. I know that this is the platform for us to be seen globally by different players, whether they are consumers, whether they are responsible for policy. I think this is your time to be able to say your piece. So I'd like to first invite Fred to close your talk for today.
Well, I mean, knowing that we are broadcasted internationally on that one, I think the message would be to investor or to fintech international company, or just entrepreneurs who are thinking going to Southeast Asia and looking for where would be the right headquarter for them. I think during many years, Philippines was in the head of everyone, but they didn't, they were like, okay, maybe Indonesia. It was the reflex of a lot of player. I think the momentum is now starting in Philippines. It's really happening. There is, as we were mentioning, and this conversation is clearly a perfect example of that. There is a very good combination and partnership with the regulators and the public sector, which is again not necessarily the case in all Southeast Asian country. You have a very eager consumer audience now. I mean, as I was mentioning, GCash is now 51 million user. So it's there. At some point, it's not us doing magic thing. It's also because organically speaking, the consumer is ready and is looking for it. We can even see now in our analysis that particularly when you reach 50 million plus, you're touching everyone. So it's not something now which is a product dedicated to the most wealthy part of the population. No, it's spread now everywhere. The fact that we were able to close this duocorn position and this fundraising show that now international investor also trust that Philippines makes sense for fintech, and there is clearly opportunity to seize. I mean, these are not NGO people. Usually when they come, it's because they know that it makes sense for everybody. So I think the message is it's time for everyone to look deeper in what can be done in the Philippines and jump in the train, because it starts. The momentum has started.
Message heard loud and clear. My main takeaway from that: establish your HQ in the Philippines. So take it from someone who's been here for 15 years. So thank you, Fred, for that. Victor?
Yeah, I think one topic we I guess we didn't have time for, was banks and fintech partnerships. So I'd like to speak to that a little bit. We're not a fintech, but we're happy to partner with them and partner with fintechs that partner with banks or partner with banks directly. We're currently taking deposits for banks, some banks. What we've done, aside from the credit scoring I've talked about, we've rolled out 700 plus recycling ATMs. So these are basically high-speed bill readers, so real-time credit on your deposits. A place to put all the cash we take in, to de-risk the cash we take in for payments. We take in like 25 billion a month. It's just, I wish that were our sales, but it's just a robbery risk, right? And we are looking to partner with, banks. It's an open platform ATM. So right now, BDO is a partner, for example. There are other banks coming on board. It's barcode enabled. So you want to withdraw money or deposit money, just show your barcode, no need for card. And we are also getting into KYC. So in partnership with a company that does the UK Post Office, so pretty legit KYC. And together, this offering, the extent of regulation we're going to go is basically remittance license. We have a remittance license, but otherwise, no plans to enter the EMI space and compete with GCash's double unicorn status. We know, our investors didn't sign up to burn. So that's something we'd open up that infra to fintechs, particularly remittance partners, international. We're looking for them. We can really drop the fees because right now those ATMs, they're net pickup. They're not deposited too. They're picked up from still. So we want to give out more cash. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Victor. An ingenious KYC that I can suggest is every time you pay for your soft drink, someone scans your finger.
Yeah. I forgot that we have 10 million downloads of the app, so it's not a small KYC effort. Yes.
Okay. Good to know. Okay, thank you very much, Victor. So Todd, a few words from you.
Yeah, so thanks everyone, great discussion. I think I will speak on the other side of bank fintech partnerships, which is the mega trend we're observing that is going to continue catalyzing fintech not only in the Philippines, but across really emerging Asia, is the unbundling of financial services from where those financial services are accessed. The old way of accessing financial services is I want to have a bank account. I go to a brick and mortar bank branch. I deal with bank employees. I access the account on the bank app. I call the bank's customer service center. I use the bank's decent or not so decent apps related to payroll processing and disbursement and foreign exchange. Everything is a vertically integrated, quite closed system. That is changing in a big way, where I, as a customer of financial services, can choose to access and interact with those financial services through fintech partners that are more suited to me, whether I am a fishing community out in an island province, or whether I'm like a young millennial, in the city, or whether I'm a foreigner or an overseas worker. I will be able to choose from and access my financial services, and that's decoupled from the provider of those services, right? And so that's a bit jargony, but what it basically means is more choice for the customer, but it also means new challenges around securing the transmission of data and making sure that there are trusted parties providing that data intermediation. So that's kind of my view of what the world's going to look like and is already taking place.
Very, very challenging for big players to hyper-localize those efforts. So Todd, thank you for that very, very rosy outlook. So Nauman, a few words from you.
Yeah, thanks again for this panel. Really informative. Great to meet all of these panelists. I would just say that over the last many years, both GCash and PayMaya have done a fantastic job of increasing the financial inclusion. The results speak for themselves. The fact that GCash was able to go to 2 billion status, that just shows that they have increased the financial inclusion incredibly. To add to what Todd is saying, I would say that now it's about taking this step to the next level by working on how to do financial empowerment for the users, and that would only be possible, as Todd said, that we have to work on the hypergrowth factor that not only works on vertical but also grows horizontally.
Thank you very much for that. And finally, Commissioner Mon.
Thank you, John. And it's been a pleasure working the panel where we talked about cash. Always, it's nice to talk about cash in a webinar. But just to remind everyone, right, that the National Privacy Commission, we are here to enable trust in businesses. That's our primary aim. When we enable trust in businesses, we employ more people. When you employ more people, we achieve the social stability that we aim for, and with that, that gives birth to more innovation, and that's how the cycle should go, right? And we know our role as privacy regulators in establishing trust, and privacy is the proxy for trust. Right, so the reminder remains, and our prescription, as Todd, you seem to be very familiar again with the regulation here. It's about embedding privacy in the design stage of your application, ensuring that not only the rapid deployment goes side by side with ensuring that consumers are protected, that everything was designed with privacy in mind. Operationalize your compliance, and again, let's practice digital ethics. It's not only about hardware and software, it's about moralware too, right? And really, we are sitting on the cusp, I think, of a major, again, a financial pivot here in the country, and we should all do our part. And for that, I think the future is very bright, again, for our consumers to enjoy the fruits of financial inclusivity.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Mon. We are definitely sitting on the cusp of, and we see it every day. It is happening. It is happening on a daily basis to millions of Filipinos. This is the place to be right now for FinTech. So thank you very much to all our panelists for sharing your insights on how consumers can be safer and more secure online, as well as motivating us for what's ahead. So it sounds, all of this, very exciting, but we still have one more message from the one and only Amor Maclan. Amor, the floor is yours.
Hi, John. Thank you so much to all our friends in the community. Today, I think, is very historic. This particular World FinTech Festival is historic. We have all been talking about the important role of the Philippines when it comes to digital money. Although I was still in school at that time, the first ever e-money was actually Filipino. Many of you might not know that, may or may not know that. And that was in the latter 90s. And this week, we were greeted with such joyous news. And I just learned a new word from Fred Levy, which is a duocorn, right? So double unicorn, and it's Filipino. So really great time. And both Nauman and Commissioner Mon Liboro, thank you, a regular World FinTech Festival in Digital Pilipinas. Thank you, Commissioner Mon. You talked about being at the right place at the right time. And there's never really been a great time to be Filipino and to be in FinTech and to be in technology than now. We're not at the cusp of a revolution, it's already happening. And the Philippines has a very important role to play there. Commissioner, you're absolutely right. We are here to recap what are some of the things that we can do together after this panel. Because Digital Pilipinas is not just a series of thought leadership platforms, but rather a platform for us to work together, to not just create that enabling environment that Commissioner Liboro has very appropriately described, but more importantly, how do we put the Philippines in a global map? Now, absolutely, Asia is the biggest FinTech, and we're at the heart of it. Now, Todd, you talked about the importance of an API economy, and this is my running joke over a few drinks with many of my friends in the industry. APIs are the language of love. The only way we can digitalize and really talk to each other in one cogent conversation is if we are in an API economy. So we look forward to championing that with you in 2022. I understand also that this week in the Singapore Fintech Festival, we will be launching the Open Banking Exchange, and the Philippines has a very important role to play in it. Commissioner, we're here to darken your doorsteps again because this year we're going to be launching a cybersecurity and a RegTech association in the same breath that we have launched what is the largest fintech association in the country, and that is Fintech Philippines Association. At 170 members, we are the biggest, and we look forward to working with you, Commissioner, in your office so that we can continue to champion, along with other multilateral organizations, consumer protection vis-a-vis this hypergrowth that we're all experiencing. Last but not the least, this word has been brandied and brandished all over, which is sandboxing, right? So our intent in a sandbox is not just to replicate the successful experiment that has been done between, say, the Bangko Sentral and the Monetary Authority of Singapore, but rather, how do we cross-pollinate and bring this sandbox mindset across other national line agencies, Commissioner? So I think one of the reasons why fintech is in hypergrowth is because, as Todd said it, we see ourselves as a horizontal and not as a vertical. And what will truly power the teching up of this country is fintech. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to go Jerry Maguire and any one of you. It's about show me the money. Maraming salamat po. And John, as always, you're fantastic, and hope this will be your cue that your next final pitch will be all about fintech. Thank you guys so much. Mabuhay po ang Digital Pilipinas. Back to you, John.
Thank you very much, Amor. I don't think I can say no to that invitation. I'm looking forward to producing the final pitch FinTech edition one of these days. And that concludes our panel on Asia as the largest FinTech, balancing hypergrowth and consumer advocacy and protection. Thank you once again to all our esteemed speakers. We hope you all take care. To our audience, keep on watching, as up next, we have a panel discussion on e-commerce and FinTech intersection. Pinoy MSMEs trade in trust and security regionally. Thank you very much.